So today we'll be looking at Octavius Caesar. So he was born as Gaius Octavius, and he was born on 63 BC in 63 BC, September 23rd. And his kinship relation with Julius Caesar is that Octavius is his nephew, Julius Caesar's nephew. So in 44 BCE, the assassination of Julius Caesar occurred. And in Julius Caesar's will, it was revealed that Julius Caesar had chosen Octavius as to inherit the Roman Republic and to become the next dictator of the Republic. He also chose Octavius to inherit his estate. Nevertheless, Marcus Antonius, who was one of Julius Caesar's chief lieutenants, he assumed that Caesar would have chosen him to inherit, to become the next dictator. So when Octavius arrived to Rome, Marcus Antonius had taken possession of all Caesar's documents and property and given it to and refused to give it to Octavius. But with the help of the Senate, Octavius defeated Antonius in the campaign of Mutina. And consequently, in 43 BCE, November 27, the Second Triumvirate was established between Lepidus, one of Julius Caesar's main followers, Antonius, and Octavius. Now, the difference between the Second Triumvirate and the First Triumvirate was that the Second Triumvirate was officially approved by the Senate. So the purpose of this triumvirate was, one, to equally distribute the power among these three dictators. Two, to avenge those who were involved in the assassination of Julius Caesar. And three, to remove all potential political enemies. Now, this is drastically different from how Julius Caesar sort of reacted towards those who had tried to harm him and tried to remove him from the position he had, because Julius Caesar liked to show clemency, to be merciful, and often spared those who tried to harm him. Now this consequently, though, did not benefit him, because the assassinators that had killed him were those that he had spared. So Octavius, realizing the mistake that Julius Caesar had made, realized that the only way to ensure that they could maintain the power they had was through removing all political enemies. So after doing so, and consequently, in 43 BCE, 300 senators and 2,000 citizens were executed because they were considered political enemies to the three triumvirs. In 32 BCE, there sort of rivalry between Antonius and Octavius began to occur. And at this point in time, Lepidus is no longer a key figure, because in 36 BCE, he was removed from his position as triumvir because he had attempted to challenge Octavius's power. So he is no longer a key figure towards the rest. Previously, there had been signs that Antonius and Octavius' relationship was quite unstable. But in order to prevent civil war from occurring, Antonius and Octavius made agreements, such as in the Treaty of Brundisum, where the land was redistributed between the two triumvirs, and also Antonius married Octavia, who who was Octavius' sister, in order for there to be ties of kinship between Octavius and Antonius. But nevertheless, in 32 BCE, the triumvirate expired, and so there began to be a more obvious enmity between the two men. Now, in this year, Antonius divorced Octavia, and thus their ties of kinship no longer exists. They each began to speak negatively about one another and to try to obtain support from citizens. Now, this was also when it was rumored that Antonius was having an affair with Cleopatra, and in this year, it's when Antonius decided to openly sort of live with Cleopatra, and this caused great discontent from Roman citizens, because it sort of showed that Antonius was no longer loyal and faithful towards his culture and his origin, and this helped Octavius gain many supporters. Octavius, using this fact, and also used Antonius's will, which further helped strengthen the belief that Antonius and Cleopatra were having an affair, to convince the Senate to declare war against Cleopatra. While really his real intention was to defeat Antonius, but he did not want it to appear as though there was another civil war occurring in Rome. So in 31 BC, September 2nd, the Battle of Actium occurred, which was a navy battle between Octavius and Antony and Cleopatra. And Antonius and Cleopatra were defeated, but they managed to survive and escaped to Egypt, but nevertheless committed suicide the following year when Octavius captured Egypt. So now this left Octavius as sort of the sole ruler of Rome, but he couldn't say that he was the king or he was dictator for life, because Rome was heavily against a kingship or a monarchy because of their political history. But nevertheless, we know that Octavius was able to assume the title as emperor and establish the Roman Empire. And now what we're going to do is sort of analyze how he was able to do this without any opposition, because it would seem as though the people would rebel against him or try to overthrow him, but this did not happen. So in 27 BCE, Octavius went to the Senate and stated that he was going to retire from his position as dictator, and was to return Rome all in order and all in harmony back to the Senate and to the people. This causes the Senate to disagree with him and to plead him to remain as ruler or dictator of Rome. And the reason for that, there were many reasons that contributed to why the Senate did not accept Octavius's offer. Well, the first thing is that Octavius did indeed, when he was dictator, enact many decisions that benefited Rome. One of the most important things he did was he reestablished order into the state, because as a result to the assassination of Julius Caesar, sort of Rome degenerated into a disorderly state, and Octavius was able to revoke that order back into the state. He also he removed all potential enemies. He removed all potential enemies, meaning that those that remained were those who were supporters of Octavius. So really, he would not have much disagreement because those citizens, those people, those senators that remained in Rome were those who greatly supported Octavius. He in fact reselected members of the Senate and replaced many Senate members with those who were his supporters. So inevitably, it was quite impossible for the Senate to accept the offer that Octavius was giving to the Senate because they all supported his rule and his position as a dictator. And also, so after the Senate agreed in Octavius obtaining this power as dictator, Octavius was still very cautious about how he was seen by the public, because if he was seen too corrupted, or like having such a strong desire for as a monarch, then he would be overthrown by the people. So another factor that contributed to his ability to maintain the power he had was his ability to conceal his desires to be a monarch. So obviously, when Approach was giving the speech to the Senate and saying that he was retiring from his position, so he was able to obtain what he wanted, but he made it appear as though he didn't want the power, and it was the Senate that he accepted the offer from the plea of the Senate. And after he assumed this power as an imperator, he also manipulated the Roman citizens into believing that he had restored the Republic. So he divided provinces, Roman provinces, and he gave some to the Senate, and they were called senatorial provinces, where all the income went to the Senate, and others he governed himself. So here Octavius carefully selected the provinces that he was giving to the Senate, because the provinces he obtained were those where the majority of the Roman legion was stationed, and that was Gaul, Spain, etc. And so what inevitably occurred was that he had command over the entire Roman army. So that was a factor of fear and force, because if anyone dared to challenge Octavius to power, he had the whole army to support him, and if he were to be assassinated, Octavius's army would attack those assassinators. Although that didn't occur, but him having control over the entire Roman army prevented rebellion from occurring. Rebellion against Octavius's position as Octavius's position. But he did not assume absolute authority. Well, he did sort of assume absolute, but he was not the only position in government. His position was not the only position in government. He had positions such as propraetors, proconsuls, and those were given to citizens. So it made it appear as though Octavius was not assuming absolute authority, because there were magistrate magistrate positions that were given to citizens. But really, those magistrates were controlled by Octavius. It was more of the honor of receiving these positions and the salary that came with these positions that sort of helped conceal the fact that Octavius controlled these magistrates. Another factor was he appealed to the appetite of the Roman citizens with wealth and with power. So again, the fact that the magisterial positions had salaries, and that it was a great honor to have a magisterial position. So and also he would at points in time give money to the citizens to help them. So another factor was his personality. He was very humble and often did not accept honors that the people wanted to be conferred upon him. He was selfless, as he contributed a lot to the public treasury from his own expenses. He used his own estate to help reconstruct roads and everything. And he was also very wise. As I mentioned previously, he enacted many projects. He made many decisions that benefited the prosperity of Rome and allowed Rome to prosper. So this is why I would consider Octavius a benevolent tyrant, because he used fear and force in order to obtain his power and in order to sustain his power with the army and with killing all potential threats, or exiling those who spoke negative about him. But he was benevolent in the way that many of his actions did in fact benefit Rome and allowed Rome to flourish, and was able to sustain order within the empire.